Welcome to today's Q&A video. Every week on my Instagram, I like to do a Q&A on my story, and I have picked out a few of the questions that you guys ask me, the questions that are most frequently asked, the questions that are most important for you guys to know, and I'm going to be answering them in this video. So let's jump in straight to question number one. Main causes of hair loss. What are the main causes of hair loss? So hair loss is a big problem for people today. It's a big cause of insecurity. It affects your appearances, it affects your confidence, and it's not just affecting guys, but I even have women in the women's program that I run who are having hair loss. So it's a big problem today. What are some of the causes? Well, there's many things, and it is definitely a health related thing, and you can blame genetics and blah blah, but really you want to look at what are the things that you can change quickly, and that is going to be related to health. And what are the health factors that affect hair loss? Well, there are many. For the purpose of this video, where I'm going to keep things dense and to the point, I will just explain one of them. One of the big problems that can cause hair loss is related to heavy metal detoxification. In our environment, from the day that we are born, if you know what I mean, we are bombarded with heavy metals in medical treatments, in the food that we eat, in canned foods, in cosmetic products, in our cooking utensils, etc. There are heavy metals everywhere, even in the air. And so these things accumulate in the body. The body uses the hair to actually remove the metals, right? How do we know this? Well, when you send off a hair sample to a lab, which is called a hair mineral analysis, I like to do this with some clients, you will see that there is a great concentration of mercury, lead, aluminum in your hair, and that really shouldn't be there, at least not in that great quantity that we see it today. So this can actually lead to hair loss, and it's very important that you address removing heavy metals, not just from the environment that you're in, not just from your food, but also from your body. And you want to do that before it starts to cause hair loss. And not just hair loss, but later down the line, that could be leading to a lot of other bigger problems where hair loss would actually be the least of your worries. The next question is, what supplements you recommend? Great question. Everyone seems to be taking dozens and dozens and dozens of supplements. All the biohackers, all the health gurus seem to be taking supplements. It's very good marketing, right? Because the supplement creates this magic secret, the one thing that you need. It kind of mystifies it, and from that mystery, you create fear and you create a product. But do you actually need them? Well, I can tell you from my own experience, where I improved my own health a lot, fixed lots of other people's health problems, none of that was actually involving any synthetic supplements. Why do I take that approach? Well, a synthetic supplement takes a compound such as, let's say, vitamin B12, and it isolates it into a pill. When you look at reality, what do you see B12? Where do you see B12? You see B12, let's say, in animal foods such as an oyster. So let's compare like a vitamin B12 or a zinc vitamin versus an oyster. When you have the oyster, you have the zinc, you have the B12, but you have a million other things in there, other nutrients, other minerals, other enzymes there, which are all what's called synergistic. It's a very important word to understand. All of those compounds are there, and they are very much necessary. They are all there for a reason. They help to actually utilize, to digest the mineral or the vitamin that you want to get. Compare that to just isolating one or two or a handful of things at the same time. You cannot really replicate all of that complexity that is in, let's say, an oyster, or in reality, in a strawberry, you have vitamin C, but you have a million other things in there, all the phosphorus and the minerals, all of the enzymes, even the bacteria there, which helps to digest it. So just based on that complexity alone, I like to source things through foods. Now, the food-based approach, where you get everything from foods, does require expertise in knowing what types of foods are very high in certain minerals, etc., which foods are the best digesting, but also understanding and experience with sourcing very high quality foods, because these days it's quite difficult to actually source foods. So it does require that expertise. Obviously, you can try and figure it out yourself, or you can pay someone to do that for you, such as in my program, where food sourcing is a big part of it. The next question, and this is a popular question, how many raw eggs do you eat a day? People ask me this question because they see me doing funny pictures with raw eggs, eating raw eggs in a Lamborghini. Eggs seem to be a big part of my brand somehow. It didn't happen on purpose, it just happened that way. And I do like to eat eggs. They are very concentrated in a lot of nutrients, a very complete food. So they are a very important part of my diet for sure. How many do I eat? Well, the answer is that it depends. It depends on a few factors. Number one is the goal of the person or myself. If I want to gain weight, then I'm not actually going to be eating so many eggs, because eggs aren't necessarily the best food for weight gain. And I say that as someone with a lot of experience helping very skinny guys to gain weight. If I want to lose weight, eggs can be a very good tool for that. Some people can even do things like egg fasting, and that works very well to lose weight, even if it's quite challenging. That's one strategy that you can take. So one thing is the goal. The next thing is the quality of the eggs. For example, if you're eating very, very low quality eggs, and unfortunately these days a lot of them are for soy fed, maybe minimal grass, stuck in a very small space or even a cage. If those are the only eggs you have, then I wouldn't necessarily suggest that eating a lot of those would be a good idea. Versus if you have some grade A eggs, and I'm someone that was farming my own chickens 2 years ago, and I did things like the best possible way, and I can tell you the difference between a very good egg and a low quality egg is significant. So if you have access to very high quality eggs, which in some countries you can get those, not just you're farming yourself, but if you have a very good local farmer, then it would be potentially a good idea to actually consume a lot of those eggs, and a lot meaning 10 plus. I've had 30 eggs in some days. The third point will depend on the other foods that you have access to. Because if you have all of the foods that you would need for a good diet, you don't need to rely on the eggs so much to give you nutrients. You can get them from other sources. So to summarize, it would be about the goal of the person, the quality of the eggs, the access to other foods that they have, which would then determine how many eggs would be a good idea to eat. Another point about the eggs that I want to add on before I move to the next question is that in this world that we live in, most of you watching this are actually malnourished. That might trigger you, that might offend you. You might associate the word malnourishing with children in a third world country, but it's true that most of you are malnourished. You have not had adequate nutrients since you were born. And that's okay. It's not your fault. It's not your parents' fault, but that's the reality of the situation. And so a better question to ask yourself, rather than how many eggs should I eat? A better question is, how many eggs can you eat? Because most people are actually starving for nutrients so much that it's a better perspective to take is, I need to get as many nutrients as possible. How many can I do? And like I said, eggs are very, very, very nutritious, and they are a good way for people to get easily digested nutrients. So ask yourself, how many eggs can you do? The next question is, Dubai has pretty bad air quality, right? How you cope with that? So on paper, Dubai does have bad air quality. When you look at the air quality index, it's actually one of the worst in the world living in the city here. But it is a trade-off, and that's how I cope with it, is by accepting that this thing isn't perfect, but it does give me something else. And you would ask then, okay, well, what do I get living in Dubai? I get a lot of my friends here, I get a good network, I get the freedom, etc. So it's really a trade-off. Another way that it's a trade-off and how you cope with it, which is what the question asked, is, well, imagine you have a seesaw, and on one side you have the negative thing that's weighing the seesaw down, and that is the air quality, for example, in Dubai. In order to get the seesaw balance, which is kind of the goal, you want to have a good balance in life, then you just need to weigh down the other side with a lot of positive, right? And that's where I have removed a lot of the toxins in my environment. I eat almost zero toxins through food. Environment, my house is optimized in such a way that there's very little toxins there. And generally day to day, I avoid toxins where it is practical to do so. And so that kind of balances out that seesaw. And that's how you cope with something negative, is just outweigh it with a positive. The next question is a really good question. Thoughts on semen retention. This is a very hot topic now because these days NoFap on the internet is very, very big. People are getting kind of more spiritual, and they say things like, oh, you should retain your seed. This is your life force and things like that. That's not necessarily wrong. It's not really the view that I adopt, but I don't necessarily disagree with it. So what is actually the catch with the NoFap thing? So let me explain. The semen retention thing is really just a mental tool. Just by refraining from dopamine, you can cultivate some discipline. You can also redirect that energy that you're not outletting into something else. Let's say a fighter, Mike Tyson, they're not going to do any kind of release prior to a fight because they can redirect that energy inside of them into the ring. And that can be a useful tool that you can use in your work or whatever ambitions you have. So it's a good mental tool. So is it good for your physical health? Well, my standpoint and how I approach it with myself is that I think that it's good to release, and that your body produces certain hormones, endorphins, which help you to stay calm, feel relaxed, and that is useful as well. There's some other theories that would explain that your body stores toxins in the glands, and that when you ejaculate, when you release, your body will release some of those toxins such as metals which store in the glands. So just based on that approach and how I feel, I prefer not to do the NoFap. The other thing to consider is that if you do decide to do the FAP approach, if you decide not to retain, then it is better that you do that with a person, so a guy if you're a girl or vice versa, compared to doing it with your hand and a laptop and some tissue, if you know what I mean. The next question is, this is a funny one because this was trending a while ago. Does eating raw onions increase testo? Does eating raw onions increase testosterone? Humans have a tendency to look for or to reduce things, right? Everyone wants to look for what's that one thing, the one magic trick, the magic pill. And the onion example is just another example of that. I can tell you from someone that increased my own testosterone, helped other guys to increase it as well. No onions have been involved in any of those crazy testosterone results that you see people achieve on my program. So it is not a valid way to increase testosterone. It might have an effect in that regard, but it's really overlooking the things which are actually important. So I would not suggest doing onions to increase testosterone. You might even find that if you eat an onion, you're going to start to cry. And that's actually, you could take the perspective that that is nature or the onion saying, hey, don't eat me, I'm poisonous. Because when you get close to me, I'm going to make you cry. And that's a signal of like there is some kind of plant chemical there that is triggering tears in humans. It makes you think, well, what's that doing when it goes inside of you? Then if you start to eat onions, you're probably going to notice that you have a lot of gas as well. So I avoid onions actually altogether, but in terms of increasing testosterone, it's not really a valid way to do that. Worst thing for health that most people don't know about. Very good question, because there's a lot of people doing a lot of things which are very questionable these days. There is a lot of things that I could talk about, and this might be actually a good topic for a whole other video, but let's give you one example that I see lots of people doing. Drinking a lot of water. So water is actually quite dehydrating. And when you get in the cycle of drinking water to hydrate, it's an unhealthy cycle there, because the more you drink, the drier your mouth becomes. And then you think, oh, I just need to drink more. Keep going, bro. 1 gallon a day. So let's go to a very concrete example, which helps to highlight the point. If you have dry lips and you lick the lips, which means applying water, your lips will get more and more dry. They don't get hydrated through you licking them. They actually get drier. And it's the same process in the human body. What is actually going to make your lips feel hydrated, to feel soft and nice, is actually a lot of fat. So you can kind of replicate that by eating a lot of fats. Obviously, quality is important, etc., as I explained in other questions. So that is actually what can make people feel kind of nourished or lubricated, is actually the fats. Other things such as drinking a lot of water, it's going to make your digestive fluids diluted, and you really want an acidic stomach to be able to digest foods correctly, as well as it's going to offset the natural electrolyte balance in the body. Those are some arguments against drinking water. I can tell you myself, I drink very, very little water, and I've done that for over 3 years now. Very, very minimal. I'm talking like some days 0, other days a cup or 2, etc. So it's really not necessary to actually drink water. You do want to do things which will prevent you feeling dehydrated in the first place. For example, lots of people these days, they're guzzling so much salt. They're even drinking 5 liters of water, a gallon of water, and they're adding salt, which is kind of silly because the salt is making you feel dehydrated, the water is making your mouth dry, and you're just getting in this cycle of thinking that you just need to drink more water, bro. Keep going, bro. Gallon a day, bro. And that is completely wrong. So in short, you want to avoid things that make you feel dehydrated, and drinking water is definitely overrated. I can tell you from experience that you don't actually need to drink any water at all if you don't want to. The next question is diet to increase mental bandwidth. So what diet is going to support good cognition, essentially, is the question. And this is a good question because lots of entrepreneurs follow me on Instagram. Some of you guys watching this video will be entrepreneurial minded people who have big ambitions. And the vehicle that is going to help you achieve those ambitions is your brain. So how can you support that brain through correct nutrition? Well, there's a few things that come to mind. Let's go through a key point. One thing that if you're having problems with energy and fluctuations in mood and energy and things like that, is that you might want to look at removing the carbohydrates, at least for the most part. And especially if it's cooked starches, potatoes, rice, pasta, etc. Those things are very heavy. They feel slow in your digestion, and they create these kind of energy spikes up and down. And so I see very good results when I remove all of the carbohydrates. Of course, the key point with this is that you have to replace it. You cannot just remove something without replacing it. Otherwise, you're going to be somewhat deficient in this case of carbohydrates. If you remove the carbs and you don't replace them, you will be energy deficient. So at that point, you need to say, okay, well, I need another energy source. What should I have? Well, fats are actually another form of energy source. And generally people, not just myself, but other people will say the same thing, that when you consume fats instead of carbs for energy, you may notice that you have more stability. And I do this as like a kind of steady rock. You're kind of stable and you're consistent with the energy. You don't have these up and down crashes that people get. The other thing that would be important to talk about is that you don't want to be relying on caffeine. And I could make a whole other video about this, but I see people so reliant on caffeine for their energy. And it's really, really bad sign because it's a negative cycle where the more caffeine, it's kind of like what I described earlier with the water. The more caffeine you drink, the more you rely on caffeine to give you that full sense of energy. And you just go into this cycle of not being able to function without coffee. You know, how many people say that, oh, I can't function without the morning coffee. So you really want to replace that coffee with adequate energy from foods. What's the best way for my brain to function? What's the best diet for my brain to function? The carbs, in my experience, aren't actually the best way to do that. You want to seek getting the energy from fats instead. Of course, Type of fat is very important. Quality of fat, very important. Quantity, also very, very, very important. Otherwise, you're not really going to be feeling good. And then you're going to say, oh, I don't like this. It's not working. I need to go eat my pizza and pasta. Next question. What's your skincare routine? Great question. These days, and I'm saying great question because they're all great questions, and I'd like you actually to keep them coming. So if you guys have any more questions that you'd like me to answer, please leave them in the YouTube comments here and I will get to them in a future Q&A video. What's your skincare routine? The truth is that the best skincare routine is through correct nutrition and removing a lot of toxins from your life, from your food, but also detoxing them from your body. And that is how you're going to have the clear, glowing skin. You don't want to be applying any chemicals. And these days, there's a lot of natural products which are actually not very natural themselves either, and they're just also dead products that you're applying. It's going to destroy the cells in your skin. It's going to lead to having unpleasant skin, which is not what you want, right? So the best skincare routine is through the nutrition, and ideally you don't need to do anything actually topically. There are circumstances where you might want to do topical application of things. For example, if you have acne, if you have psoriasis, if you have those kinds of dry skin conditions or acne, then there will be some protocols that you can do where that could improve it, where you apply things topically. If you don't have a major skin condition and you just want to overall kind of take your skin from medium or good to amazing, then you really want to have any topical skincare routine ideally. Tips for building a 7-figure coaching business. Very good question. Lots of people starting coaching businesses these days. How do you do it successfully? Well, I can just speak from my own experience. The key point is that you are someone that has something that people want, because in truth, as the coach, you are the product. People buy you, they like your energy, they want to absorb some parts of you into their life to basically enhance their life. So it's very important that you have something that people want. You really just want to focus on yourself. That is the single most powerful thing that you could do. And you want to be an example for people. You do want to have something that people want, and that can just be a good attitude, honesty, whatever it is. So that's one thing. The next thing, it's really all about results. You need to get game-changing results, and that is how the word is going to spread. That is how people will get their friends into your program. That is how people will give you great testimonials, and they will speak very highly of you. And that is how I did it myself. Focus on yourself, develop yourself, and make sure that you deliver people very, very good results. And that is how you will build a successful business where it is a win-win for you as you receive money in return for helping people to achieve something that is meaningful and impactful in their lives. So that is going to be it for today's Q&A. If you have more questions, very important that you leave it in a comment on this YouTube video and I will answer it in a future YouTube video. Subscribe if you haven't already, because I'm posting way more videos to come. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one.